When I checked my car's dashcam, I discovered my wife's secret affair. But then she laughed in my face, so I planned a revenge that left her begging for mercy. The late afternoon sun poured through the kitchen window, casting a warm golden glow across the counter. It was one of those perfect evenings, quiet, peaceful, the kind of evening where everything felt in balance. The world seemed to slow down in the hum of a mundane rhythm. At least that was how I liked to think of it. Mia had just returned from her trip to visit her parents, a trip I had encouraged her to take after the busy months we'd spent. The house had felt too empty without her. Our days had become a blur of work meetings, and an unspoken distance that hung in the air, a tension I couldn't quite place but also didn't have the energy to confront. But she was back now. I watched her as she walked through the door, her smile slightly forced but still there. She hugged me briefly, too briefly for my liking, and pulled back to set her bags down. "It's good to be home," she said, her voice warmer than her touch. "I missed you," I replied, trying to sound more sincere than I felt. She nodded, brushing her hair out of her face. There was a slight twitch in her eyes that I didn't understand. "I missed you too," she said a little too quickly. "You have no idea how much." But I did have an idea. We both did. Our marriage hadn't been the same for months. We'd grown apart, and I couldn't even say exactly when it happened. Was it her busy schedule? Mine? Or had it been something deeper? I always told myself it was just a phase, a temporary thing. But as she began to unpack her bags, I caught sight of the small things, the way she avoided my gaze, the way she held herself, a kind of defensiveness I hadn't noticed before. And that feeling in the pit of my stomach, the one that told me something was off. That's when I decided to check the car dashcam. It had been a few weeks since I installed the new dashcam, something I'd been meaning to do for a while. It was a high-quality model, with all the bells and whistles, motion detection, GPS tracking, and most importantly, a feature that allowed me to remotely access the footage. I'd installed it with the thought that it would simply be a security precaution, nothing more, nothing less. I never meant to use it for anything else, but on this evening, with a strange sense of unease creeping in, I decided to take a look at the footage from the past week. Mia's trip the day she'd been away seemed like an obvious place to start. I pulled my phone from my pocket and opened the app. The screen flickered for a second before showing me the footage from the car's front camera. The last clip was from the day Mia had left for her parents' house. I watched her climb into the car, adjust the rear-view mirror, and then drive off down the street. I remembered that day she'd seemed distracted. A little too distracted. I scrolled back through the footage, tapping on the days when she was away. Most of the clips were ordinary, her driving the typical suburban landscape. Until I got to the last few. In one clip there was a car parked beside hers, right at the edge of the frame. The windows were tinted, but I could make out a man sitting inside. His posture was rigid, his hands clenched around the steering wheel. He didn't seem to notice the dashcam, but I did. I zoomed in on the man's face. His features were sharp, almost too sharp. Something about him felt wrong. The car had been parked there for a long time. And when Mia came into view, she didn't walk directly to her car. Instead, she lingered by the man's car for several moments. I couldn't hear what was being said, but I could see her lips moving, her body language hesitant, flirtatious almost. It didn't make sense. Why hadn't she told me about this? Who was this man? A few more seconds passed, and Mia's voice filled the silence of the car. "I can't wait for tonight," she whispered, leaning toward the window. I froze. Tonight? Who was she meeting? My pulse quickened. I reached for the phone, tapping frantically to rewind. The car in the video pulled away from the curb, and Mia followed. They drove in tandem for a while, their cars swaying in and out of traffic. I could barely breathe. The footage from the dashcam was more revealing than I wanted. More than I needed. I leaned forward, tapping the screen again. The footage shifted to a new location, a dimly lit alley behind a cafe. The man's car was parked there. Mia's car pulled up beside it. She didn't get out. The footage stopped. I watched it again and again, the questions gnawing at me. What was going on? Who was he? It was late that night when Mia finally came to bed, slipping under the covers beside me, careful not to disturb me as I pretended to sleep. But I wasn't sleeping. I could feel the rage bubbling inside me, a quiet storm waiting to break. I let her fall asleep, listening to the rhythmic sound of her breathing, the way her body shifted under the sheets. I could still smell the scent of perfume on her skin. A perfume I didn't recognize. I waited for hours. I could feel the tension in the air, thick and suffocating. Finally, when I couldn't stand it any longer, I sat up, throwing the covers off me. I turned on the lamp beside the bed and stared at her, motionless as if she were a stranger. "Mia," I said quietly. She stirred, opening her eyes, confusion flashing across her face. "What's wrong?" she asked softly. I didn't speak right away. Instead, I reached for my phone and opened the dashcam footage, holding it up for her to see. "Who is he?" Her face drained of color. She blinked, her eyes whitening in shock. What is this?" "Don't lie to me," I growled, my voice low, steady, but full of venom. "Who is he, MIA? The man you've been meeting?" She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. The silence between us was unbearable, suffocating. And then she laughed. A short, sharp, mocking laugh. "You think you can control me, don't you? You think you can keep me locked in this little life you've created?" She spat, sitting up in bed, her anger now rising to meet mine. "You really are pathetic, Jimmy." Pathetic. Her words cut through me like a knife, but it was the smug look in her eyes that truly shattered me. She wasn't afraid. She didn't even care. I couldn't control myself any longer. I grabbed her arm, yanking her toward me, fury and betrayal clouding my judgment. "Don't you dare laugh at me, I see that." She didn't flinch. Instead, she smiled almost pityingly. "You don't get it, do you? I've been waiting for this moment. You've been a boring, predictable husband. He makes me feel alive. He knows how to treat me." Her words were a slap to my face. My blood boiled as her lover's image filled my mind, the man who'd taken her away from me. But I wasn't done. Not yet. The next few weeks were a blur of plotting. I'd been weak. I'd been hurt. But I was done. I watched her, I listened to her, and I knew exactly what I needed to do. Mia thought she was safe. She thought she could humiliate me and get away with it. But I had a plan. I started small, subtle actions. Conversations with people she thought I didn't know, people she trusted. A few carefully placed words, a few well-timed rumors. Each one of them was like a seed, planted in the right soil. Her lover. He lost his job. Publicly shamed, humiliated. His reputation torn to shreds. Mia. She was harder. But even she wasn't immune. I waited for the right moment. And when it came, I made sure it hurt. The day Mia finally came to me broken, begging for mercy, anything to stop the destruction I had unleashed, was the day I realized I'd become something I didn't recognize. Something darker. Something that had been forged in betrayal, in pain, and in the sweet taste of vengeance. But even then, as she wept, as she knelt before me in desperation, I couldn't bring myself to feel pity. "I told you," I whispered coldly. "Some betrayals don't break us. They make us stronger." And for the first time in months, I felt a strange sense of peace,